My 30th birthday was supposed to be a milestone celebration, but instead it became the day that shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. While searching for my birth certificate for a new job application, I found adoption papers hidden in my parents' home office. The documents revealed a truth they had kept from me my entire life. When I confronted Harold and Martha, their cold response shocked me even more than the discovery itself. They not only confirmed I was adopted, but also informed me I was no longer in their will. Before I tell you about this heartbreaking truth, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about family revelations like this one. For 30 years, I believed I was the beloved only child of Harold and Martha Wilson, a respected couple in our suburban Connecticut community. Dad was a successful corporate attorney while Mom managed the local art gallery. We lived in a beautiful colonial home with a white picket fence that perfectly symbolized our seemingly picture-perfect American family. Growing up, I had everything a kid could ask for: material comfort, educational opportunities, and what I thought was unconditional love. I followed the path they set out for me: excellent grades. At the private school, they selected a business degree from their alma mater and eventually a promising career as a financial analyst. Every Sunday, we would have dinner together, a tradition we maintained even after I moved into my own apartment in the city. On the surface, we were the ideal family that neighbors envied and relatives admired. Looking back now, there were subtle signs I should have noticed. The family photo albums had no baby pictures of me before age 2. I had dark brown hair and hazel eyes, while both my parents were blonde with blue eyes. They always dismissed these differences, saying I took after a great uncle on Mom's side. I never had any interest in golf or sailing Dad's favorite hobbies, preferring music and art instead. These differences seemed trivial at the time, just normal variations within a family. My parents were private people who rarely discussed emotions or personal matters. They never talked about my birth or early childhood, and whenever I asked questions about family medical history for doctor appointments, they would provide vague answers and change the subject. I chalked it up to their reserved New England personalities, never suspecting there was a secret they were keeping from me all these years. That fateful day began ordinarily enough. I had received an offer for a senior position at a prestigious firm, and they requested a copy of my birth certificate for background verification. Since I had recently moved, I couldn't find my copy and decided to check my parents' house during my regular Sunday visit. They were at their country club for a golf tournament, so I had the house to myself. In their home office, I searched through the filing cabinet where they kept important documents. Behind a folder labeled tax records, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to discover adoption papers dated 28 years ago. The document stated that I.J. Wilson was legally adopted at age 2 by Harold and Martha Wilson from the New Hope Children's Home in Philadelphia. My hands trembled as I read the papers over and over. The room seemed to spin around me. This couldn't be right. Why had they never told me? Every birthday celebration, every family holiday, every proud moment when they called me their son, all flashed through my mind with a new, unsettling context. Had our entire relationship been built on a lie? When my parents returned home, I confronted them in the living room, adoption papers in hand. There was no emotional outburst, no tearful confession. Instead, Harold adjusted his glasses and said, "We were planning to tell you eventually. It never seemed like the right time." Martha added without making eye contact, "It shouldn't matter anyway. We raised you, provided for you. Isn't that enough?" Their cold, defensive response felt like a second betrayal. I asked why they had hidden this from me for 30 years, and Harold replied, "We didn't want you to feel different. It was better this way." But something in their tone suggested there was more to it. When I pressed further, Martha finally snapped. "What difference does it make now? You're not our biological son. We did our duty raising you. What more do you want?" I felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath me. These weren't the loving parents I had known all my life. It was as if removing this secret had also removed a mask they had worn for decades. In the weeks that followed, our relationship deteriorated rapidly. Sunday dinners became brief, strained affairs, filled with awkward silences and superficial conversation. My phone calls went unanswered for days, and when they did call back, the conversations were short and formal. They began excluding me from family events, claiming they were just small gatherings with close friends. At my cousin's wedding, I overheard Aunt Judith whispering to another relative, "Harold and Martha are so disappointed. They never thought Jay would react this way about the adoption. They always saw him as a son, but now he's making everything difficult." I was stunned. They had shared my private business with the entire family before I had even processed it myself. One day, I ran into Sarah, my mother's closest friend, at a local cafe. She seemed uncomfortable seeing me, but agreed to sit down for coffee. After some hesitation, she revealed, "Your mother always struggled with not having biological children. They adopted you after years of fertility treatments failed, but Martha never fully accepted it. Harold went along with whatever she wanted. They loved you in their way," but Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Martha always felt something was missing." Those words cut deep. Was I just a consolation prize for the biological child they couldn't have? Had they resented me all along beneath their perfect parenting facade? The doubt poisoned every happy childhood memory I tried to hold on to. My work performance began to suffer as I spent sleepless nights questioning my identity. Who was I really? Where did I come from? Why was I given up for adoption? These questions consumed me, making it difficult to focus on anything else. With the little information I had from the adoption papers, I began searching for my biological parents. The process was frustrating and full of dead ends. Many records were sealed, and the adoption agency had closed years ago. After weeks of persistence, I discovered my biological mother's name was Elizabeth Parker, but she had passed away from cancer when I was in college. The records showed no information about my biological father. Each piece of information felt like finding a single puzzle piece without seeing the full picture. I joined online support groups for adoptees, seeking advice and understanding from others who had walked this path. Their stories helped me feel less alone, but the ache of disconnection from both my adoptive and biological families remained. I hired a private investigator who specialized in adoption cases, but even she struggled to find substantial information. Elizabeth Parker had been young when she had me just 19 and had little family of her own. The investigator found that she had worked as a waitress in Philadelphia until her illness never married and left behind few connections we could trace. The more I searched, the more I felt like a ghost in my own life. Story a person without roots or connection to either past or present. My sense of identity that had once seemed so solid was now fragmented into pieces that didn't fit together. The situation reached its breaking point at my parents' 35th wedding anniversary dinner. They had hesitantly included me, perhaps out of obligation or concern about appearances. The celebration was held at an upscale restaurant with about 20 family members and close friends in attendance. Everyone was dressed formally. Champagne was flowing, and a slideshow of family photos played on a screen near the head table. Though I noticed there were few pictures of me, compared to countless shots of my parents' travels and play. Accomplishments. During the dinner, Harold stood to make a toast. After thanking everyone for coming, he spoke about legacy and family tradition. Looking directly at my cousin Eric and his wife, he said, "Martha and I are so blessed to see our family values continuing through the next generation. We look forward to passing down the Wilson family treasures and traditions to those who truly represent our heritage." The implications were clear to everyone in the room. I felt the pitying glances from relatives who knew about my adoption. My throat tightened as I tried to maintain my composure. Later, as dessert was being served, Aunt Judith made a comment about how Eric and his wife should redecorate the family vacation home when it becomes theirs someday. I couldn't help asking. I thought that property was meant to be shared among all the family. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Harold cleared his throat and said, "Well, Jay, Martha, and I have been doing some estate planning. We've decided to make some changes that make more sense for the family bloodline." Martha added coldly, "The vacation property has been in Harold's family for 4 generations. It's important it goes to someone who can truly continue the Wilson name and legacy." The room seemed to freeze. Even relatives who moments before had been complicit in the conversation looked uncomfortable now. I whispered, "So, because I'm adopted, I'm not really family," Harold replied without emotion. It's nothing personal, Jay. It's just about preservation of our heritage. You understand, don't you? But I didn't understand. How could the people who packed my lunches, attended my graduation, and called me son for 30 years, suddenly decide I wasn't family enough? When I pointed this out, Martha's facade finally cracked. Of course we care about you, Jay. We did everything for you. But be realistic, you're not our blood. We fulfilled our obligation raising you. Now that you're an adult, we need to think about the real Wilson legacy. Real Wilson legacy. The words echoed in my ears like a gunshot. 30 years of believing I was their son, their legacy disappeared in an instant. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. Every eye in the room was on me. I'm sorry my existence has been such an obligation to you both, I said quietly. Then I walked out, ignoring their calls to come back and be reasonable. That night, as I drove home in the pouring rain, the full weight of their rejection crashed over me. I wasn't just excluded from their will. I was being erased from their story entirely. The following months were the darkest of my life. I stopped attending family functions and blocked my parents' numbers after Harold called to tell me I was overreacting and needed to understand their position. Depression settled over me like a heavy fog. I took a leave of absence from work, unable to concentrate or function effectively. The thought of facing colleagues who would ask about my family or weekend plans filled me with dread. My apartment became my fortress and prison. Days blurred together as I oscillated between numbing myself with television and lying awake at night, replaying every family memory, searching for signs that would have revealed the conditional nature of their love. If not for my friends David and Amanda, I might have remained in that dark place indefinitely. They refused to let me isolate myself, showing up with groceries, forcing me to join them for dinner, and gently suggesting I seek professional help. David, who had lost his parents in a car accident years before, understood grief in a way few others could. You don't have to pretend you're okay, he told me. They're still alive, but you're mourning the parents you thought you had. With their encouragement, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Marshall, who specialized in adoption trauma and family estrangement. In those sessions, I began to untangle my sense of self from my parents' rejection. Being adopted wasn't the problem she helped me see. The problem was having parents who placed conditions on their love. The painful truth was that their love had always been conditional. I just hadn't known the condition. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. I returned to work part-time, started exercising again, and reconnected with friends I'd pushed away. The pain didn't disappear, but it became more manageable as I created a life separate from the identity of being Harold and Martha's son. 6 months after the anniversary dinner disaster, I received an unexpected call from a law firm I didn't recognize. The receptionist informed me that Frank Peterson, a senior partner, needed to speak with me regarding an urgent matter. Assuming it had something to do with my parents' estate planning, perhaps some legal maneuver to formally disinherit me, I almost declined the meeting. But curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet the following day. The law firm was located in a historic building downtown with leather chairs and oak paneling that spoke of old money and established clients. Frank Peterson was an elderly gentleman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He welcomed me warmly, nothing like the cold legal confrontation I had expected. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming," he began. "I represent the estate of Walter Bennett, your mother's uncle." I was confused. My mother, Martha, didn't have an uncle named Walter. Seeing my confusion, he clarified, "Not Martha Wilson. I'm referring to Elizabeth Parker, your biological mother. Walter Bennett was her maternal uncle, your great-uncle." My heart began racing. This was the first connection to my biological family I'd discovered since beginning my search. "You knew my biological mother?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Frank nodded. "I was Walter's attorney for over 30 years. He was aware of your existence and your adoption. Elizabeth had stayed in contact with him until her passing." He smiled gently. "Walter had no children of his own, and after Elizabeth died, he made it his mission to locate you. He never interfered in your life, respecting your adoptive parents' boundaries, but he kept track of your progress from afar." The attorney opened a folder on his desk. Walter passed away 3 weeks ago at the age of 87. In his will, he named you as his primary beneficiary. His estate includes a brownstone in Boston valued at approximately $2 million, investment accounts worth just over $3 million, and some personal effects he specifically wanted you to have. I sat in stunned silence. Not only had I discovered a biological relative, but this man who had never met me had left me his entire estate. What kind of person looks out for a great nephew they've never met? I asked, still processing the information. Frank smiled. A very special one. Walter was an anthropology professor, a world traveler, and quite the character. He believed family connections transcended conventional boundaries. He handed me an envelope. He left this for you as well. Inside was a letter written in a shaky hand. Dear Jay, it began, though we never had the opportunity to meet in person, I want you to know that you have always been family. Elizabeth loved you deeply, but was too young and ill-equipped to provide the life you deserved. Her decision to place you for adoption was made with tremendous love and hope for your future. I have watched your journey from afar with great pride. The man you have become would have made your mother very proud. This inheritance comes with no strings attached, unlike the conditional acceptance you have recently experienced. Use it to build the life that brings you joy, and perhaps to discover more about where you come from. With great affection, your Uncle Walter. Tears streamed down my face as I read the letter again. This stranger had given me something my adoptive parents never had: unconditional acceptance. In the following weeks, I worked with Frank to settle Walter's estate. Among his personal effects were photo albums containing pictures of my biological mother from childhood through her early 20s. I saw my own smile in hers, my same hazel eyes looking back at me. There were journal entries Walter had kept about my biological mother's life, including her pregnancy and decision to place me for adoption. I learned Elizabeth had been a talented artist who became pregnant by a fellow art student who left when he learned about the baby. She had tried to make it work as a single mother, but struggled with poverty and later illness. The journals revealed her anguish over the decision to place me for adoption and her hope that it'd have opportunities she couldn't provide. Walter had also kept a file of newspaper clippings and information about me, my college graduation announcement, a mention of a charity event I'd helped organize, even a copy of my business cards from different jobs. Had been silently cheering me on from the sidelines of my life. These discoveries healed something broken inside me. I hadn't been abandoned or unwanted. I'd been loved enough by my biological mother to be given a chance at a better life. And I'd been valued enough by a great uncle to be remembered and provided for, even though we'd never met. The inheritance gave me financial independence I hadn't imagined possible. After careful consideration, I decided to leave my corporate job and pursue more meaningful work. I used a portion of the money to establish the Elizabeth Parker Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing support for young single parents and children in the foster system. I moved into Walter's brownstone, surrounded by his books and artifacts from around the world. His home became mine, and as I learned about his life through his possessions and stories from his colleagues, I felt a growing connection to my biological family and heritage. 2 years passed during which I built a new life centered around the foundation, new friendships, and a sense of purpose I'd never felt in my corporate career. The foundation was making real differences in people's lives, and I'd found a community of passionate individuals who shared my vision. Then came a surprising phone call from my father. From Harold. He and Martha wanted to meet for dinner to talk. According to Harold, they had been following news about my foundation and my success. My first instinct was to refuse to protect myself from further hurt. But after discussing it with Dr. Marshall, I decided to hear them out. We met at a neutral restaurant downtown. Harold and Martha looked older than I remembered, more fragile somehow. They were dressed impeccably as always, but there was a nervousness to them I'd never seen before. After awkward greetings, we ordered drinks and sat in uncomfortable silence until Harold finally spoke. You've done very well for yourself, Jay. The foundation, the interviews we've seen, we're proud of what you've accomplished. I nodded but said nothing. The word proud from his lips no longer held the power it once did. Martha reached across the table but stopped short of touching my hand. We miss you, Jay. The family isn't the same without you. We've been doing a lot of thinking about how things ended, and we believe we may have been too hasty. I took a sip of water, maintaining my composure. What exactly are you proposing? Harold straightened in his chair. We want to welcome you back into the family. We've even spoken to our attorney about amending our will to include you again. There it was, the real reason for the reconciliation attempt. They'd heard about my inheritance and suddenly wanted to mend fences. I wondered if they were hoping some of Uncle Walter's money might eventually flow back to them. So now that I'm wealthy, am worthy of being a Wilson again? I asked quietly. That's not fair, Martha protested. We've always loved you. I looked her directly in the eyes. You told me I wasn't your real son. You said you had fulfilled your obligation to me. You cut me out of your lives because I wasn't your blood. Those are not the actions of people who love unconditionally. Harold frowned. We were upset. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. I shook my head. No, people say exactly what they mean when they're upset. The facade drops. I finally saw the truth about our relationship. I took a deep breath before continuing. I appreciate you reaching out, but I can't simply pretend those words were never said or that they didn't reveal how you truly felt about me all along. But you're our son, Martha, insisted, tears in her eyes. Am I asked, or am I only your son when it conveniences you, when it fits your narrative, when there might be some benefit to claiming me? They both looked shocked at my directness. The old Jay would have accepted their half-hearted apology, desperate for their approval. But that person was gone. I didn't come here to hurt you, I said more gently. But I can't go back to pretending. If you want any kind of relationship moving forward, it needs to be built on honesty and acceptance, not conditions, and certainly not because of my financial situation. Harold and Martha exchanged glances clearly, not having expected this response. The conversation ended shortly after, with vague promises to stay in touch. As I watched them leave the restaurant, I felt no anger, just a quiet sadness for what might have been had their love been genuine. A year after that dinner meeting, my life had transformed in ways I never imagined possible. The Elizabeth Parker Foundation had expanded to 3 cities, supporting hundreds of families and children. It found purpose in creating the kind of safety net I wished my biological mother had had. Each time we helped a young parent complete their education or provided therapy for an adopted child struggling with identity issues, I felt Elizabeth and Walter smiling down on me. I began dating Sophia, a brilliant architect I'd met through foundation work who had also been adopted. Our shared experiences created an immediate bond, though our stories were very different. Her adoptive family had been open about her origins from the beginning and maintained relationships with her birth family. Through her, I saw what healthy adoption could look like: unconditional love combined with truth and openness. Harold and Martha made occasional attempts to reconnect, sending birthday cards and Christmas invitations. I responded politely, but maintained firm boundaries. Dr. Marshall helped me understand that forgiveness didn't require restoring the relationship to what it had been. I could forgive them for my own peace without allowing them the opportunity to hurt me again. The most profound change was in how I viewed myself. I was no longer seeking validation from others to determine my worth. My identity wasn't defined by who raised me or whose biological child I was. It was built on my choices, my values, and the connections I chose to nurture. The pain of rejection hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments when a family walking together in a park or a father and son playing catch would trigger a sense of loss. But those moments no longer derailed me. They were just echoes of an old wound that was healing more each day. What I came to understand through this journey is that family isn't defined by blood or legal documents. Real family consists of the people who stand by you through darkness, who celebrate your joy without envy, who love you without conditions or expiration dates. Sometimes that's the family you're born or adopted into, and sometimes it's the family you build yourself. For those of you watching who may be struggling with rejection or questioning your place in the world, please know that your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. The family that matters is waiting for you sometimes in unexpected places or through surprising connections. Have you ever experienced conditional love or had to redefine what family means to you? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button so others who might need to hear this message can find it too. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, biological or not, the love that matters is the love that stays when tested. Take care of yourselves and each other.